The Detective Agency, Part 1. Once upon a time, in a small town called Greenhill, there was a young man named Alex. Alex was 25 years old and had always loved solving puzzles and mysteries. As a child, he would spend hours reading detective stories and watching mystery shows on TV. He dreamed of becoming a detective one day, but in Greenhill, there weren't any detective agencies, and nobody seemed to need one. Greenhill was a peaceful place where everyone knew each other. The town was surrounded by green hills and forests, and the streets were always quiet. But Alex knew that even in the quietest towns, secrets could be hidden. One sunny morning, Alex was having breakfast with his best friend, Emma, at the local cafe. Emma was a school teacher who loved children and was always full of energy. As they sipped their coffee, Alex suddenly had an idea. "Emma, why don't we start a detective agency?" Alex said excitedly. Emma laughed. "A detective agency? Here in Greenhill? What mysteries would we solve, Alex? Missing cats." Alex smiled. "You never know, Emma. Even small towns have secrets, and I think we could help people. We could find lost things, solve problems, and maybe even catch a thief or two." Emma thought about it for a moment. She loved adventures, and the idea of solving mysteries with Alex sounded fun. "Okay, I'm in, but where do we start?" Alex and Emma decided to set up their detective agency in a small room above the cafe. They cleaned the room, put up a sign on the door that said, "Greenhill Detective Agency," and bought a notebook to write down all their cases. They were ready to solve their first mystery. Days passed, and nobody came to the agency. Alex began to worry that maybe Emma was right. Maybe there were no mysteries to solve in Greenhill. But Emma kept Alex's spirits up. "Be patient," she said. "Something will come." One day, just as they were about to close the agency for lunch, the door opened and a woman rushed in. She looked worried and out of breath. "Are you the detectives?" she asked. "Yes, we are," Alex said, standing up quickly. "How can we help you?" "My name is Mrs. Thompson. I live just down the street," the woman said. "This morning, my precious necklace went missing. It's a family heirloom, and I always keep it in a small box on my dresser. But when I went to get it this morning, the box was empty." Alex and Emma exchanged excited looks. This was their first real case. "Don't worry, Mrs. Thompson," Emma said calmly. "We'll find your necklace." Alex and Emma quickly gathered their detective tools, magnifying glasses, notebooks, and a camera. They followed Mrs. Thompson to her house, which was a lovely old building with a garden full of flowers. Inside, Mrs. Thompson led them to her bedroom. "This is where I keep the necklace," Mrs. Thompson explained, pointing to a small wooden box on her dresser. The box was beautifully carved, but when Alex opened it, there was nothing inside. Alex started looking around the room for clues. He checked the windows and doors to see if someone might have broken in. Emma carefully examined the dresser, the bed, and the floor. Mrs. Thompson, did anyone else come into your room this morning? Emma asked. No, nobody, Mrs. Thompson replied. I was alone, and I only left the room for a few minutes. Alex noticed something shiny on the floor. It was a small piece of string. He picked it up and showed it to Emma. Do you recognize this string, Mrs. Thompson? Alex asked. Mrs. Thompson shook her head. No, I've never seen it before. Alex put the string in his pocket. It might be a clue, or it might be nothing, but he didn't want to leave anything behind. Next, Alex and Emma decided to check the rest of the house. They looked in every room, but there was no sign of the necklace. They even searched the garden, thinking that maybe someone had thrown it out the window. But the necklace was nowhere to be found. As they were about to leave, Alex suddenly had an idea. Mrs. Thompson, do you have any pets? He asked. Yes, Mrs. Thompson replied. I have a cat named Whiskers. Where is Whiskers now? Emma asked. He's probably in the kitchen, Mrs. Thompson said. He loves to sit by the window and watch the birds. Alex and Emma went to the kitchen and found Whiskers sitting on the windowsill, just as Mrs. Thompson had said. Alex noticed that Whiskers was playing with something in his paws. It was shiny and looked familiar. Whiskers, what do you have there? Alex asked as he gently took the object from the cat's paws. To his surprise, it was Mrs. Thompson's missing necklace. Whiskers must have taken the necklace while you were out of the room, Alex explained to Mrs. Thompson, handing her the necklace. He probably thought it was a toy. Mrs. Thompson was relieved and grateful. Thank you so much. I was so worried I had lost it forever. As Alex and Emma left Mrs. Thompson's house, they felt proud of their first successful case. Well, that was easier than I expected, Emma said with a smile. Yes, but it was a good start, Alex replied. Who knows what our next case will be? As they walked back to their little office, Alex couldn't help but feel excited. The Green Hill Detective Agency was officially open for business, and he was ready for the next mystery. But what they didn't know was that a bigger and more challenging case was just around the corner, one that would test all their skills as detectives and bring them face to face with real danger. But that is a story for another day, to be continued in Part 2. The Detective Agency, Part 2. Alex and Emma were thrilled with the success of their first case. The story of how they found Mrs. Thompson's necklace quickly spread through Green Hill. People started to talk about the new detective agency in town, and soon enough, Alex and Emma found themselves busy with small cases finding lost keys, helping people locate their pets, and even solving a few disputes between neighbors. But deep down, Alex and Emma both knew that they were ready for something bigger, something more challenging. One evening, as they were closing the agency, a man in his early 40s walked in. He had a serious look on his face, and he was dressed in a suit that looked a bit too formal for Green Hill. The man introduced himself as Mr. Oliver Banks, a businessman from the nearby city of Brookfield. I've heard about your agency from a friend. Mr. Banks began, looking around the small office. I need your help with a very important matter. I believe someone is trying to sabotage my business. Alex and Emma were immediately intrigued. This sounded like the kind of complex case they had been hoping for. Please, Mr. Banks, tell us everything, Alex said, pulling out his notebook. Mr. Banks explained that he owned a chain of luxury hotels, and lately, strange things had been happening at his flagship hotel in Brookfield. The hotel had received several bad reviews online. Complaints about the quality of service, and even reports of mysterious incidents, like strange noises in the middle of the night, missing items from guests' rooms, and even a fire alarm going off without reason. All of these incidents were driving away guests and hurting the hotel's reputation. I've had the hotel inspected, and there's nothing wrong with the building, Mr. Banks continued. But these incidents keep happening. I suspect that someone inside the hotel might be behind all of this, but I can't prove it. That's why I need detectives, someone who can work discreetly and find out what's really going on. Alex and Emma exchanged a glance. This was the big case they had been waiting for. We'll take the case, Mr. Banks, Emma said confidently. We'll start by visiting the hotel and talking to your staff. We need to gather as much information as possible. Mr. Banks nodded. Thank you. I'll arrange for a room at the hotel for you, so you can stay there and investigate. But please be careful. Whoever is behind this is very clever. The next morning, Alex and Emma packed their bags and took the first train to Brookfield. The city was much bigger and busier than Greenhill, with tall buildings, crowded streets, and people rushing everywhere. It was a sharp contrast to the peaceful life they were used to, but Alex and Emma were focused on their mission. The hotel was a grand building with a beautiful lobby, chandeliers, and marble floors. As they entered, they were greeted by the manager, Mr. Harris, who showed them to their room. The room was luxurious, with a large bed, a view of the city, and all the amenities one could ask for. I hope you'll find your stay comfortable, Mr. Harris said as he handed them the key. Mr. Banks has informed me of your visit, and I'm here to assist you with anything you need. Thank you, Mr. Harris, Alex said. We'll need to speak with the staff and some of the guests who reported incidents. We also want to see the places where these incidents occurred. Of course, Mr. Harris replied. I'll arrange for you to meet with the staff later today. As for the guests, I'm afraid most of them have already checked out after the incidents, but I can give you the contact details of those who are willing to speak with you. As they settled into their room, Alex and Emma began to plan their investigation. They decided to start with the staff, as they were the ones who would know the most about what was happening inside the hotel. Later that afternoon, Mr. Harris introduced them to the key staff members, housekeepers, maintenance workers, the front desk staff, and the night security guard. Alex and Emma asked each of them detailed questions about their duties, the incidents, and if they had noticed anything unusual. The housekeepers mentioned that some of the guests' belongings had gone missing, but they hadn't seen anyone suspicious in the hallways. The maintenance workers confirmed that there were no issues with the building's systems that could explain the fire alarm or strange noises. The front desk staff mentioned that they had received several complaints, but nothing that pointed to a specific person. The night security guard, however, had something more interesting to say. There was one night when I heard footsteps in the hallway around midnight, the guard said. But when I checked the security cameras, there was no one there. It was like the footsteps just disappeared. Emma wrote down everything carefully. And did you hear these footsteps more than once? Yes, the guard replied. But always late at night, and they never lead anywhere. After speaking with the staff, Alex and Emma decided to review the security footage themselves. Mr. Harris provided access to the recordings, and they spent hours watching the tapes. The footage was mostly uneventful guests checking in and out, staff going about their duties, but then, around midnight on the night the guard had mentioned, they noticed something odd. The camera near the hallway on the third floor showed a shadow moving, but there was no one there. Do you see that? Alex asked, pausing the video. There's a shadow, but no person. Could it be a trick of the light? Emma shook her head. I don't think so. Let's keep watching. As they continued to watch the footage, they noticed that the shadow appeared on multiple nights, always around the same time, and always in the same spot. This is strange, Alex said. It's like someone or something is deliberately trying to create a mystery. But why? The next step was to speak with the guests who had reported incidents. They contacted a few of them, and their stories were similar strange noises, missing items, and a general feeling of unease. One guest even claimed to have seen a figure in the hallway late at night, but when they called for help, no one was there. As the days went by, Alex and Emma grew more puzzled. The incidents were real, but they couldn't find any solid evidence of who or what was causing them. Then, one night, while they were reviewing the footage again, they heard a noise outside their room. It was the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, and coming closer. Alex and Emma exchanged nervous glances. They had been in the hotel for almost a week, and this was the first time they had experienced anything strange themselves. Grabbing their flashlight, they opened the door and stepped into the hallway. The hallway was empty, but the footsteps continued. They seemed to echo off the walls, making it hard to tell where they were coming from. Alex pointed the flashlight down the hallway, but there was nothing there. Just as they were about to turn back, Emma noticed something on the floor, a small, crumpled piece of paper. Alex picked up the paper and unfolded it. There was a single word written on it: leave. What does this mean? Emma whispered. It means someone knows we're investigating, Alex replied, and they don't want us here. The next morning, Alex and Emma showed the note to Mr. Harris, who was just as surprised as they were. He assured them that the hotel was safe and that no one would dare threaten them, but Alex and Emma weren't so sure. They decided it was time to dig deeper. They spent the next few days talking to more staff, reviewing more footage, and even checking the hotel's history for any clues. That's when they discovered something interesting. The hotel had been built on the site of an old theater that had burned down many years ago. Some of the staff believed that the theater was haunted, but it was just a local legend, nothing more than stories. Could this be related? Emma wondered as they sat in their room, going over the information. It's possible, Alex said. Maybe someone is using the old theater's history to scare people away. But why? As they continued their investigation, they noticed that the incidents seemed to be concentrated around the third floor, where the shadow had been seen. They decided to focus their efforts there. One night, Alex and Emma set up a stack out on the third floor. They hid in a storage closet, waiting for midnight to come. The hallway was dark and quiet, and the only sound was the ticking of the clock as it approached midnight. Then, just as the clock struck 12, they heard the footsteps. The sound was soft at first, then grew louder as it approached the hallway. Alex and Emma held their breath as they peeked out of the closet. A figure appeared at the end of the hallway. It was dressed in dark clothes and moved quickly, almost as if it was floating. Alex grabbed his camera and started taking pictures. Emma watched closely, trying to figure out who or what it was. The figure moved toward the middle of the hallway, then stopped. It seemed to be looking around, as if searching for something. Alex and Emma waited, barely daring to breathe. Suddenly, the figure turned and walked back down the hallway, disappearing around the corner. Alex and Emma waited a few more minutes, then quietly followed. When they reached the end of the hallway, the figure was gone. They searched the area, but found nothing, no sign of the person, no clues, nothing. This is getting more mysterious by the minute, Emma said, feeling a mix of excitement and frustration. The next